A virtuous man, when you meet a virtuous man, you know who you're dealing with. They're not different with their parents. They're not different at church. They're not different with their friends. They're not different with people that they don't know. That's that man. And what that comes down to be also is kind of a type of humility. Humility is humility is being who you are before God and nothing else. Do you see? So to be a virtuous man is to be who you are before God and not to put on some fake show that you're something else. So people will appreciate you for this or that when you're really not that at all. St. Francis was somebody who was always very genuine. He was very genuine. Unfortunately, you'll hear in different homilies and sermons that St. Francis was somebody that he led kind of a wayward life, they might say. Right? He was a partier. That really isn't true. He was just a fun-loving, good young man. They say that St. Francis probably never soiled his baptismal garment. He was a virtuous man, even when he was a secular man. He just was a bit flamboyant. He paid for all of his friends. He loved to sing. I don't know if you've been to Assisi. Has anybody been to Assisi in Italy? You remember when you go to those towns, it's just all, the road is stone, the buildings are stone, and they're kind of close together. So when you're walking down some of those roads, he would just be in the middle of the night with all of his friends singing at the top of their lungs. What do you think that's going to do to the people trying to sleep inside? It's just all bouncing all the way inside their windows. Do you see? But he was so he drove some people nuts. But he wasn't necessarily, he was inconsiderate maybe at times, but it wasn't that he was a mortal sinner. St. Francis had a very heroic soul, and he desired to fight. He wanted to be a knight. He wanted the nobility of the knight. His family wasn't noble. They were rich. At that point in time, there was a great affluency that was starting to happen in that time period where men could actually, because you had, I don't need to get into all of it, but with the feudal system, you normally just had the rich and you had those who worked for them. This time period started to raise up people who were entrepreneurs. His dad, Pietro Bernardone, he had a fabric shop, and he got pretty wealthy doing it. Well, his son grew up wealthy. They were comparable to a type of nobility, but they weren't noble. Do you see? People back then, you wanted to be noble, but that was in your bloodline. The next thing, though, was to become a knight, because you could be made a knight. And that was a type of, granted nobility. St. Francis longed for it. His dad wanted him to do it too. But every time he got all of his armor, he had such a generous heart that he'd see somebody else that really he thought deserved the armor, and he'd just take it off and give it to him. So every time he came back to Assisi, a failure. Until he went to fight in Perugia, the war at Perugia. That's a town right next door, right? You got these hills. In Italy, you got a hill, and then on that hill's a town. Then you got a big valley, and then you go up on the hill, you got another hill. This hill's Perugia, that hill's Assisi. Well, they were fighting amongst them. The nobles were fighting against each other. And so the town from Assisi went to fight the town of Perugia. In that battle, St. Francis, who fought in that battle, he was put in jail. He was imprisoned. He was a prisoner of war for about a year. It's a long time. He probably faced some stuff. I'm sure they weren't nice to each other. He came back and he got really sick. And then during that convalescence, as they say, he started to think more about his life. And in doing that, he started pondering the deeper things, not the singing with everybody in the streets and treating all of his friends, not being a knight. But even with that, our Lord appeared to him, well, at least in a dream, and he saw a room full of all kinds of armor and shields. Our Lord was calling him to take up arms. So St. Francis tried it again. He went out and got all the armor. He tried to go down with this other knight to try to become a knight in a war more down south. And again, like he gave all his armor away, came back. Again, a failure. And it started him on another path. And that path was one of sorting out who he was. Do you see? That was vocation. Something you all should be thinking about. Most of you probably are getting to that age. You're starting to find girls very attractive. So you obviously don't have a vocation because you find girls attractive. That's not how it works. It has to do rather with every man finds girls attractive. It's whether or not God's calling me to do something supernatural. And St. Francis found himself at this moment. He was being called to do a supernatural thing. He was being called to be a knight and to take up arms. But as a man of virtue, not a man of strength in arms. Not externally, but internally. Do you see? That's heroic. We think it's heroic to go out and fight on a battlefield. But you can be a wretched sinner and fight on a battlefield and do a good job. But only a saint can go to heaven. And only saints practice heroic virtue. Do you see? So to be a man, what we consider a man, someone who's heroic and has that strength, that's somebody who practices virtue. This is what we find in St. Francis. That's the great thing that he teaches the young people today, is how to discern a life of virtue. Whether you enter religious life, which you should consider, or if you get married, or better, if you decide to stay single. What, friar? That's right. The Catechism of the Council of Trent says it's even better to stay single and offer yourself to God in the rest of your life. It's not one option or the other. Do you see? I want to read you some things about St. Francis. When we're talking about virtue, and some of you heard this, I read some of these quotes to you. These are from encyclicals from the popes, when the encyclical used to be readable within, a matter of minutes instead of a matter of days. This was an encyclical written by Leo XIII, wrote one, very wise pontiff. Pius XI, very, very wise pontiff. And Benedict XV. That's back in the day. So these were late 1800s, early 1900s, encyclicals on St. Francis. They're on our website, so I would encourage all you young people to read them. They're really incredible reads. It's a real short biography on a saint that you wouldn't expect to be written by the church. Because nowadays, we get a lot of stuff, you don't want to read any of it. This stuff was really pretty incredible to read. He says, now perfection of Christian virtue lies in that disposition of soul which dares all that is arduous or difficult. Now you think about that. Most of you young people today, you look not to do things that are hard, and your dads know it. You hear about it, don't you? You get something that's difficult to do, you want to quit. You don't want to do it. It's too hard. Doesn't make sense. I don't know how it works. It's always kind of the same thing. Christian perfection dares. It dares all that is arduous or difficult. Its symbol is the cross. Do you see where virtue starts to take you? It's not just about empty activities that you do so people think you're holy. It's about that interior disposition of trying to accept the cross. Its symbol is the cross, which those who would follow Jesus Christ must carry on their shoulders. It doesn't just say the saints, but it means it, because anyone who wants to go to heaven should be a saint here before they go. It's not just something we try to arrive at. Which those who would follow Jesus Christ must carry on their shoulders. The effects of this disposition are a heart detached from mortal things. Now, you young people, when you get mad because you're told no, you want something, and your parents won't give it to you. You know how it makes you feel. You set your heart on that thing. You want that thing because you've been thinking about it. Well, there you go. If you really desire things of this earth, it's already, whenever that happens, it's already a sign that you are set for the things of this world. You want the things of this world, and you don't want anything to get in your way of those things. Do you see? That's not a Christian disposition. It's a pagan one. We have to mortify that. We Christians mortify that. It's a detachment from mortal things, complete self-control, and a gentle and resigned endurance of adversity. That's all heroic. Do you see? Now, when they want you to go out there and wrestle pigs and shoot fish and, I don't know, what other things they do? Jump in cold water, whatever. What are these manly programs they have where they make you do manly things? Is that what they make you do? One of the friars, his brothers go and do manly things. Is that what they do? They shoot stuff. They shoot stuff and they jump in the water and they wrestle things. There's probably other good things too. But here we see mastery. We see mastery of an individual. Do you see? That's why today, so often you see people looking at the New Age stuff. They think those people have mastery. They can sit there under a tree with their legs folded and do nothing for 3 days. Mastery. That's not mastery. We're looking for that kind of gentle resignation to endure adversity. In fine, this is all from Leo XIII. See, they didn't write like sissies back then. You get stuff that this is real stuff. In fine, the love of God and of one's neighbor is the mistress and sovereign of all other virtues. Such is its power that it wipes away all the hardship that accompany the fulfillment of duty and renders the hardest labor not only bearable, but agreeable. Imitating 𝐂𝐃𝐄, that was written by Pius XI. He was the Pope right before Pius XII. I know you can figure that out by the numbers, but sometimes, it leaps because they get a couple other popes in there. But Pius XI, he called every cardinal in before he died with the future Pius XII standing behind him, who was the Secretary of State. And then every cardinal came in, he told them, you vote for him for the next pope. So during that conclave, the future Pius XII stood up and said, the Pope is dead, you have no obligation to follow his obedience, you don't have to vote for me. And they voted for him anyways. So Pius XI, in 𝐂𝐃𝐄𝐃 says this, as a matter of fact, by his practice of all the virtues in a heroic manner, by the austerity of his life and his preaching of penance, by his manifold and restless activity for the reformation of society, the figure of Francis stands forth in all its completeness, proposed to us not so much for our admiration, but for our imitation. You hear him say it all the time. This feast day of St. Francis will come up and be like, some of the saints, the saints were not just to imitate, but just to admire what they did. Here the Pope himself in an encyclical is telling you he was not put forth just for admiration, but for imitation. His heroic virtue is to be imitated by all Christians. That's a powerful thing to have said about you by a pope in an encyclical. As the herald of the great king, His purposes were directed to persuading men to conform their lives to the dictates of the evangelical sanctity and to the love of the cross. Do you see? Purpose. They have purpose for your life other than for yourself. You young people, it's unfortunate, but a lot of you, even though you're coming from good families, you get to go to Latin Mass, your parents care about the faith. A lot of people don't care about the faith. Most kids aren't growing up in an environment where anybody cares about anything except for pleasure. Where's that going to end up? That's why there's such a high suicide rate today. They care about themselves. They want this happiness that only has to do with them. They can't find it, so they quit everything. Do you see? But when you change your perspective on things so that your desire is for what you were created for, it changes everything. Because everything in your life now becomes well-ordered. Do you see? If you are at the center of your life isn't well-ordered. And you'll always be upset because you'll never obtain the thing that you want. It will always get ruined in some way. But if God, because you were created for God, by God and for God, if indeed you recognize the fact, the order, if you put it in order properly, it's like you can't be disappointed anymore. Because if hardship and difficulty comes, you realize that comes from God. And you're happy to face it. Do you see the difference?